Beneath the surface of our world lies a silence filled with questions. Ruins that should not exist, symbols that no one can read, monuments so vast and precise that even modern engineers struggle to understand how they were built. These are not the everyday remains of history. They are anomalies, outliers that refuse to fit neatly into the timeline of human civilization. They whisper of forgotten knowledge, of cultures whose voices were drowned out long ago, leaving behind only fragments that puzzle us to this day. Archaeologists and scholars approach these mysteries with careful tools and measured theories. They dig, they map, they compare, but for every answer uncovered, a dozen more questions take its place. Was the hand of man alone responsible for these wonders? Or do they tell of something deeper, an inheritance of knowledge passed down through time, perhaps from civilizations we no longer remember? The line between myth and history grows thinner the closer we look. Consider the places where these enigmas rest. Some lie hidden beneath the sea, as if the oceans themselves chose to guard their secrets. Others stand defiantly in deserts, mountains, or forests, silent against centuries of wind and rain. And still more are carved in stone with symbols that no living tongue can speak. These are not the traces of simple survival. They are echoes of intent, of minds that sought to shape the world in ways we still cannot fully grasp. And before we get into the video, these videos take a long time to research and create. If you'd like to support the work and see more deep dives into the mysteries of the ancient world, consider subscribing to Ancient Epochs. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Also, the images you see are for visualization and added context to help bring the past to life, so there is no need to watch them closely. High in the misty hills of West Java, Indonesia, rises a place that seems at first to be nothing more than a natural ridge dotted with scattered stones. But look closer, and the hill reveals secrets. Rows of massive basalt columns arranged in terraces, platforms, and walls that suggest intentional design. This is Gunung Padang, a site many archaeologists call the largest megalithic complex in all of Southeast Asia. Yet its true age and its true builders remain cloaked in mystery. Gunung Padang has long been known to local people, who regarded it as a sacred place. The Sundanese believed it was linked to powerful ancestral spirits, a site of ritual and reverence. But to the wider world, it drew little attention until the early 20th century, when Dutch colonists noted its unusual stone formations. In the decades that followed, researchers began to suspect that Gunung Padang was no mere hilltop. Beneath the grass and soil lay a monumental construction whose origins could rewrite the story of civilization in this region. The surface of the site consists of 5 stone terraces stacked one above the other, each supported by retaining walls of neatly arranged basalt pillars. These columns, broken from volcanic flows, were carefully placed to form platforms and pathways, their orientation suggesting deliberate design rather than random scattering. From the summit, the site commands a wide view of the surrounding valleys, giving it an aura of both authority and mystery. What makes Gunung Padang truly remarkable, however, is what lies beneath. In recent years, ground-penetrating radar and other surveys have revealed buried chambers and layers of stonework hidden under the hill itself. Some studies suggest that the visible terraces may rest atop an artificial pyramid, an artificial core of cut and filled stone that could extend deep into the earth. If this is true, Gunung Padang is not just a megalithic site, but potentially the oldest pyramid on Earth. Dating has become the heart of the controversy. Mainstream archaeologists often argue that the terraces were constructed around 500 BCE during Indonesia's late prehistoric period. But alternative researchers, drawing on carbon dating from soil and organic material trapped in the lower layers, claim that Gunung Padang could be over 10,000 years old, perhaps as old as 20,000 years. Such a date would place it long before the rise of known civilizations, even before Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, often called the world's first temple. If these claims are accurate, then Gunung Padang may represent evidence of a forgotten, highly organized society in Southeast Asia, a society that predates the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, the pyramids of Egypt, and the cities of the Indus Valley. Such an idea challenges the very foundations of archaeology, which holds that complex societies only began to appear around 6,000 years ago. Skeptics, however, urge caution. They argue that the radiocarbon dates come not from the stones themselves, but from soil and organic matter that may have shifted over millennia. They suggest the buried pyramid may be nothing more than natural volcanic rock formations misinterpreted as architecture. To them, Gunung Padang is a significant site, but not one that rewrites history. Yet the debate refuses to die. For many, Gunung Padang has become a symbol of the possibility that our understanding of the past is incomplete. Ancient legends in Indonesia tell of advanced civilizations swallowed by floods and disasters, echoes of myths found across the world, from Atlantis in the west to the great deluges of Mesopotamia and India. Could Gunung Padang be the remnant of one such forgotten culture? Standing among the terraces, the feeling is unmistakable. The stones, weathered by centuries of rain and sun, still align in rows and platforms that seem too deliberate to dismiss. The air is heavy with silence, broken only by wind sweeping across the hill. Visitors describe the site as haunting, a place where time itself feels thin, as though the earth holds memories it refuses to release. If Gunung Padang truly is a pyramid, buried beneath layers of volcanic soil and vegetation, then its significance is almost beyond measure. It would mean that long before the pharaohs commanded their stone monuments, long before the ziggurats of Mesopotamia rose from the plains, humans in Southeast Asia had mastered the art of megalithic construction. It would mean that history is not a straight line from primitive to advanced, but a cycle of forgotten ages, where knowledge rises, falls, and vanishes, leaving behind only fragments. And even if it proves to be natural, the enigma of Gunung Padang still captivates, for it embodies the essence of mystery itself, the blurred line between geology and human craft, between legend and fact, between the known and the unknown. The terraces remain quiet and immovable, daring us to explain them. For now, the truth of Gunung Padang lies buried beneath its stones, awaiting further excavation, further study, further courage to face what it might reveal. Perhaps the hill hides chambers filled with artifacts, inscriptions, or tools that could settle the debate. Or perhaps it will continue to defy explanation, a monument to the limits of human understanding. Far off the coast of Okinawa, Japan, beneath waters swept by powerful currents, lies a monument that has ignited fierce debate for decades. Divers descending into the depths of Yonaguni Island do not find simple coral reefs or eroded stone formations. Instead, they are confronted with vast, terraced steps, angular walls, and what appears to be a monumental staircase, an arrangement so geometric, so deliberate in appearance, that it raises one haunting question. Is this the work of nature or of an ancient civilization long forgotten? The Yonaguni monument first gained attention in 1986 when a local diver, Kihachiro Aratake, stumbled upon the site.
At first glance, it seemed to be a massive rock formation. Yet the more divers explored it, the stranger it became. The structures stretch over 150 meters in length and 40 meters in height, carved into layers of sharp edges and flat platforms. Some areas resemble grand plazas, others look like stairways leading upward, as if guiding visitors toward a vanished temple. One particularly striking feature is a series of steps that descend in precise intervals, almost too exact to be the product of mere geological chance. Supporters of the artificial theory argue that no known natural process could have shaped the monument so symmetrically. They point to features such as right angles, flat terraces, and what looks like an avenue or road connecting different levels of the site. Some divers claim to see carvings resembling animals, symbols, or even a colossal human face, though skeptics dismiss these as tricks of light and imagination. If the monument truly was constructed by human hands, the implications are staggering. Japan's earliest known advanced cultures, such as the Jomon people, thrived thousands of years ago. Yet the Yonaguni structures may date back even further, to a time when much of the Earth's ice was locked in glaciers and sea levels were dramatically lower. Some estimates suggest that the site could be over 10,000 years old, predating not only Japanese civilization, but also the great cities of Mesopotamia and Egypt. If true, then the Yonaguni monument might stand as evidence of an advanced culture lost to the rising seas at the end of the last ice age. But the debate is far from settled. Many geologists argue that the monument is entirely natural. The region's sandstone is known to fracture in straight lines, forming sharp edges and block-like patterns that mimic man-made construction. To them, the so-called steps and terraces are nothing more than the product of tectonic activity and underwater erosion. What looks like a pyramid, they claim, is only the ocean carving shapes out of rock over eons of time. And yet, the mystery refuses to fade. Divers and researchers return again and again, each convinced they glimpse something that cannot be explained by geology alone. Some suggest that the monument was a natural formation, later enhanced by human hands, perhaps an ancient people carving into the rock to create temples, ceremonial platforms, or fortifications. If that is true, it raises another question: who were they? No records, no myths, and no artifacts have yet been recovered from the waters of Yonaguni to prove human involvement. The silence of the sea keeps its secrets well. And yet, some theorists have linked the monument to legends of lost lands, even Atlantis. They argue that Yonaguni may have once been part of a thriving culture that disappeared beneath the waves when the seas rose around 8,000 years ago, erasing their cities and their names from memory. Adding to the enigma, the Yonaguni monument is not alone. Around the world, other mysterious underwater sites have been discovered. The ruins of Pablo Petri off the coast of Greece, the submerged city of Dwarka in India, and stone structures in the Caribbean that some believe to be remnants of forgotten civilizations. Together, these sites suggest that human history along the coasts may be far older and far more complex than conventional timelines allow. Standing at Yonaguni's edge, divers often describe a profound sense of awe, as if they are swimming through the bones of a lost world. The silence of the deep, the play of light across stone, the haunting shapes that rise from the seabed, all combine to create an experience both surreal and unsettling. Whether natural or artificial, the site forces us to confront the possibility that our understanding of prehistory may be incomplete. If it is natural, then it is a geological wonder, a breathtaking cathedral of stone crafted only by the blind hand of Earth itself. But if it is artificial, if even part of it was shaped by human hands, then it rewrites everything we know about the dawn of civilization. It would mean that long before the pyramids, long before Sumer, long before the great stone cities we revere today, a forgotten culture rose and fell, leaving behind only this submerged monument as their testament. The waves crash endlessly above Yonaguni, concealing the truth. Divers descend, measurements are taken, arguments rage on, but the monument keeps its silence. It is a puzzle carved into the seabed, its answer hidden beneath centuries of sand, salt, and sea. Perhaps one day new evidence will surface. Perhaps the oceans will yield artifacts that tell us who built these steps, or prove for once and for all that no human hand was ever involved. Until then, the Yonaguni Monument remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the ancient world.
On the high plains of western Bolivia, where the air thins and the peaks of the Andes scrape against the sky, the land holds a secret etched into its surface. Stretching across hundreds of square kilometers are thousands of straight lines, vast ruler-straight paths carved into the desert floor. Known as the Sahama lines, they are so immense that they can only be fully seen from the air. And like so many of the world's great enigmas, their origin and purpose remain unsolved. At first glance, the Sahama lines seem unremarkable. They are shallow grooves in the earth, no more than a few centimeters deep, formed by scraping away the thin layer of dark soil and vegetation to reveal lighter ground beneath. Yet their true scale is staggering. The lines stretch for up to 20 kilometers each, crossing mountains, valleys, and rivers with astonishing precision, often intersecting with one another to form a colossal web. Together, they cover an area estimated at more than 22,000 square kilometers, far larger than the Nazca lines of Peru, which are often more famous. Unlike Nazca's animal and geometric figures, the Sahama lines form no images. They are not shaped into birds, monkeys, or spirals. Instead, they are raw, unbroken paths, so straight that they appear to defy the natural landscape. Some run parallel, others converge at shrines, villages, or ancient ceremonial sites. This has led many researchers to believe that the Sahama lines were not random scratches in the earth, but deliberate works of sacred geometry, pathways laid out to connect holy places in a vast spiritual network. The indigenous Aymara and Quechua peoples of the region may hold the key. For them, the landscape itself was sacred, infused with spirits and ancestors. Mountains were revered as living beings, rivers as channels of life, and certain sites as portals to the divine. The Sahama lines may have been ceremonial avenues, routes walked by pilgrims as they journeyed between shrines. In this interpretation, the lines are not meant to be viewed from above, like Nazca, but to be walked upon, one foot after the other, in acts of devotion that connected the people physically to their gods. But the mystery deepens. Some of the lines stretch for such distances that maintaining their near-perfect straightness seems almost impossible without advanced surveying techniques. They climb slopes, cross rugged ground, and extend beyond the horizon, as if the makers had tools to measure and align with uncanny accuracy. No written records survive to explain how or why they were made. All that remains is the silence of the desert and the marks upon its skin. Attempts to date the Sahama lines have proven difficult. The dry climate has preserved them for centuries, perhaps millennia, but without organic material for radiocarbon testing, their exact age is unknown. Some scholars argue they may be at least 3,000 years old, linking them to early Andean cultures long before the rise of the Inca. Others suggest they were maintained and expanded over centuries, evolving into the massive network we see today. The sheer labor involved is almost unfathomable. To carve thousands of lines, some stretching for tens of kilometers, would have required countless hands and endless time.
Why would ancient people commit such energy to projects visible only from the sky, unless their purpose transcended practicality? Some theorists suggest astronomical alignments, arguing that the lines may have been aligned with solstices, star paths, or celestial events. Others see them as an earthly mirror of the heavens, a sacred geometry linking the human realm to the cosmic order. And then, of course, there are the more radical ideas. Some claim that the Sahama lines, like Nazca, may have been created as landing paths for otherworldly visitors, a theory that finds little support among scholars but persists in the popular imagination. Standing on the ground, however, the lines are almost invisible. They are low, subtle, blending into the landscape unless you know where to look. Only from above, in the view of a bird or a satellite, does their immensity become clear. This paradox has baffled researchers. If they were not made to be seen from the sky, what was their true function? Was it purely ritual, a sacred act of walking and connecting? Or do the lines encode knowledge we have yet to decipher? The Sahama lines remain one of the least studied wonders of the ancient world, overshadowed by their Peruvian cousins, but arguably far more extensive. In their silence lies their power. No inscriptions explain them, no myths preserve their story, no artifacts reveal their builders. They endure as an enigma written across the earth itself, vast as a labyrinth, timeless as the mountains that surround them. Whether ceremonial pathways, astronomical alignments, or messages written for gods alone, the Sahama lines remind us of the hidden depths of human imagination. They speak of a people who looked at the world not as inert soil and stone, but as a living canvas upon which meaning could be carved. And as the winds of the Andes sweep across the plateau, the lines remain, defying the centuries, daring us to understand.
High in the Peruvian Andes, where mist drapes across steep valleys and rivers cut through stone, lies a site that feels less like a ruin and more like a riddle. This is Chavin de Huantar, an ancient ceremonial center whose labyrinthine passages, haunting carvings, and subterranean chambers whisper of rituals we can scarcely imagine. Built more than 3,000 years ago, Chavin stands as one of the earliest and most influential cultures of the Andes, yet its true purpose and the beliefs of the people who created it remain clouded in mystery. At first sight, the site is dominated by the temple complex, massive stone walls rising in tiers, built with astonishing precision. The architecture blends plazas, terraces, and sunken courts, all aligned with the surrounding mountains and rivers. Beneath the surface lies a network of underground galleries, dark corridors, and hidden chambers that snake beneath the temple like veins. These passages are narrow, twisting, and often disorienting, as if designed to unsettle those who entered. The art of Chavin is equally enigmatic. Carved into stone walls and monuments are images that blur the line between human and animal. Fanged jaguars, snarling caimans, soaring hawks, and serpents coiling into abstract forms. Priests and deities alike appear as hybrids, part man, part beast, part divine. The most famous of these is the Lanson, a 15-foot-high granite monolith hidden deep within the temple. Its surface is etched with a fearsome figure, a deity with feline fangs, staring eyes, and hair made of writhing snakes. Visitors would have entered the dark galleries, perhaps by torchlight, to stand before this figure in awe and fear. Why such imagery? Scholars believe the Chavin culture was rooted in shamanic practices, where priests sought to transcend the human state and channel the power of animals.
Jaguars, snakes, and birds of prey were not mere symbols, but living embodiments of strength, transformation, and connection to the spirit world. By merging human and animal features, the carvings reflected the shaman's own metamorphosis during ritual, a state of becoming something more than human. Supporting this theory is evidence of psychoactive plants found at the site. The San Pedro cactus, native to the Andes, contains mescaline, a powerful hallucinogen. Ancient carvings depict figures holding cactus stalks, suggesting its use in ceremonies. Imagine the scene: initiates entering the temple after ingesting the cactus, guided through dark, echoing corridors, while music from conch-shell trumpets reverberated through the stone. In their altered state, the carvings would come alive, the shadows would shift, and the Lanson deity itself might appear to move, radiating divine presence. The underground passages were more than architectural curiosities. They may have been tools of transformation. Some are designed with channels that carried rushing water, creating roaring echoes that filled the chambers with sound. Others contain hidden vents where light or smoke could filter in, heightening the sense of otherworldly presence. To step into Chavin's galleries was to leave behind the ordinary world and enter a controlled environment where every sound, shadow, and symbol worked together to overwhelm the senses. But Chavin was more than a local shrine. Archaeological evidence suggests it served as a pilgrimage center for the ancient Andes. People traveled vast distances, bringing goods, offerings, and cultural ideas. This may explain why Chavin art and iconography spread far and wide, influencing later civilizations such as the Moche and the Inca. It was not merely a religious site, it was a hub of ideology, uniting diverse peoples through shared symbols and rituals. Yet, despite decades of excavation, many questions remain. What exact role did the priests play? Were the ceremonies intended to heal, to control, to connect with the gods, or to establish authority through fear and awe? Why such animal deities were so central to their worldview? And perhaps most haunting of all, what did those initiates truly experience in the depths of the temple as the Lanson loomed in the flickering torchlight? The mystery only deepens when one considers the collapse of Chavin. By around 200 BCE, the site was largely abandoned. Some suggest natural disasters, landslides, floods, or earthquakes disrupted the delicate balance of ritual life. Others think shifts in culture and power drew pilgrims elsewhere, but the echoes of Chavin lingered, carried forward in art, myth, and memory across the Andes. Today, walking among the ruins of Chavin de Huántar, one feels the weight of its strangeness, the silence of the galleries, the unsettling power of the Lanson, the serpentine carvings twisting in shadow. All speak to a worldview alien yet familiar, where the boundary between human and divine was thin, and the temple itself was a stage for transformation. Chavin does not give up its secrets easily. It stands as a testament to humanity's ancient desire to reach beyond the ordinary, to touch the sacred through stone, sound, and vision. It asks us to imagine a time when ritual was architecture, when art was myth made flesh, and when mystery itself was the foundation of society. And so the labyrinth remains, its stones etched with beasts and gods, its chambers still echoing with questions that no voice has yet answered.
In the heart of the Viking Age, between the 9th and 11th centuries, warriors carried into battle swords so advanced that they defied the technology of their time. These were the Ulfbert swords, weapons of such remarkable craftsmanship that they seemed centuries ahead of what was possible in medieval Europe. To this day, their origin, their makers, and the secrets of their steel remain cloaked in mystery. Over 170 Ulfbert swords have been discovered across Europe, most concentrated in Scandinavia and areas touched by Viking raids and trade. Each bears a distinctive inscription inlaid along the blade, plus Ulfbert or variations of that name. This mark, carved in iron with incredible precision, became synonymous with superiority. For the warriors who wielded them, these swords were not only weapons, but also symbols of power, status, and prestige. Yet the very existence of these blades poses a troubling question. How could swordsmiths of the early medieval world create metalwork that surpassed the technology of their age by hundreds of years? The mystery begins with the steel itself. Ordinary medieval swords were forged from bloomery iron, a process that left behind impurities and limited the quality of the blade. Ulfbert swords, however, were made of crucible steel, a material of near mythic status in medieval Europe. Crucible steel required heating iron ore to incredibly high temperatures, melting it into a liquid state so that carbon could be infused evenly throughout. The result was steel of extraordinary purity and strength, lighter, sharper, and more flexible than anything common swordsmiths could produce. The Vikings who carried Ulfbert swords wielded weapons that could bend without breaking, slice through inferior blades, and maintain a deadly edge. And yet, the technology to create crucible steel is not believed to have existed in Europe until centuries later. The process was known in the Middle East and South Asia, where craftsmen in places like India and Persia produced the legendary Damascus and Wootz steels. For such material to appear in Viking swords suggests one of two possibilities. Either the knowledge of crucible steels somehow traveled northward across continents long before historians assumed, or the raw steel itself was imported into Europe through trade networks and then forged into Ulfbert blades. Both scenarios raise staggering questions about the global connections of the Viking world. The name Ulfbert itself adds to the enigma. Was Ulfbert a master swordsmith, a family of craftsmen, or perhaps a brand name adopted by different smiths across generations? The inscriptions on the blades vary, sometimes spelled with a cross at the beginning or end, sometimes with slight differences in lettering. Some swords bearing the Ulfbert name are of incredibly high quality, while others are crude imitations made from inferior metal but carrying the same mark as though to deceive buyers. This has led scholars to believe that Ulfbert was less an individual and more a trademark, one that became so famous that it was counterfeited even in the Middle Ages. Still, the finest Ulfbert swords are undeniably extraordinary. Tests have shown that they contained carbon levels nearly 3 times higher than typical medieval swords, with almost no slag impurities. Some metallurgists have compared them to modern industrial steel in terms of quality. To the Vikings who carried Ulfbert swords, wielded weapons that could bend without breaking, slice through inferior blades, and maintain a deadly edge. And so, the mystery deepens when we consider how these swords spread. Many Ulfbert blades have been found in graves, placed alongside warriors for their journey into the afterlife. Others were dredged from rivers, possibly thrown in as ritual offerings. The geographic spread of the finds suggest not only Viking ownership, but also trade and exchange across Europe. It is possible that Ulfbert swords were prized exports, passing through the hands of merchants and nobles alike. Their presence hints at networks of contact that stretched far beyond the narrow fjords of Scandinavia. Yet, just as suddenly as they appeared, Ulfbert swords vanished. By the 11th century, the production of these remarkable blades ceased. Why?
Perhaps the trade routes that supplied crucible steel collapsed. Perhaps the secrets of their forging were lost with the deaths of key craftsmen. Or perhaps the changing nature of warfare, with new weapons and tactics, rendered them less essential. Whatever the cause, the knowledge of how to make Ulfberht blades faded into obscurity, leaving behind relics that modern science still struggles to explain. Today, Ulfberht swords sit in museum cases, gleaming with the brilliance of a forgotten skill. To modern eyes, they are more than weapons. They are artifacts that whisper of hidden knowledge, lost connections, and the ingenuity of people once dismissed as barbarians. The Vikings may be remembered as raiders and seafarers, but in the Ulfberht swords, we glimpse a civilization capable of mastery on par with the greatest metallurgists of the ancient world. The question remains, who were the makers of Ulfberht? Were they a lone genius working in secret for kings and chieftains? Were they part of a broader network that linked the north to the distant east, importing the raw steel of Persia or India? Or did they somehow stumble upon a method centuries before the rest of Europe would catch up? The truth may never be known, but the swords endure, perfectly balanced, impossibly strong, and still sharp after 1,000 years. They stand as testaments to a lost art. The Ulfberht blades remind us that history is never a straight line of progress. Sometimes knowledge flashes like lightning across the centuries, illuminating the darkness, only to vanish again.
Beneath the earth, across oceans, and hidden in ruins, humanity has left behind riddles that still defy explanation. From lost cities to cursed relics, from impossible maps to ancient swords that rival modern steel, these mysteries remain unsolved. Perhaps one day answers will come, but until then, they remind us that history is not a closed book. It's a labyrinth with countless doors still locked. If you've enjoyed this journey into the unknown, consider subscribing. These films take a long time to research and create, and your support means everything. And remember, the images shown are for visualization only, to help bring these mysteries to life. The real truths remain buried, waiting for us to uncover them.